Hello everyone, I'm Rob Panting, Communications Manager at OxLEP, and welcome to our latest online business event. At OxLEP, we believe it's key to provide our business community with a platform and an opportunity to understand what the future local economy may look like here in Oxfordshire and how businesses can play their part in shaping it. Through today's session, we aim to share expert opinion from across our successful business community, providing a useful, interactive and relevant forum as we all continue to assess and evolve our businesses shaped in many ways by the current pandemic. For this online event, we will focus on the Oxfordshire Plan 2050 and discuss why the business voice needs to be heard. The timing of this event couldn't be more important. A full consultation of the plan will begin in due course, running for a further 10 weeks. As you may be aware, Oxfordshire Plan 2050 is one of the commitments made by the county's local authorities as part of the £215 million housing and growth deal. We at OxLEP are also a signatory to this deal, which was confirmed 3 years ago. Oxfordshire Plan 2050 will determine how Oxfordshire will grow and develop over the next 30 years and aims to highlight the county's ambition and desire to keep us as a dynamic business economy and a world leader in technology and innovation. It will also aim to ensure there are plenty of good, well-paid jobs, preserving the history and heritage that draws millions of tourists each year to Oxfordshire, giving our communities unrivaled opportunities, whilst also maintaining the amazing environment we live in. This morning, we will hear from a number of high-profile Oxfordshire business leaders who will outline why it's vital that the county's business community engage with Oxfordshire Plan 2050, helping to shape a future economy that is viable for many and creates opportunities for all communities, whether local, national or international. We hope this event will play a key role in highlighting to our business community the need for you to engage with Plan 2050, helping to create an Oxfordshire that is renowned across the UK and around the world, with the ability to attract talent and provide opportunities for young people and local communities, ensuring that they have a stake in the future of prosperity for the county. Details of this consultation process, as well as the Plan 2050 themes, can be found via oxfordshireplan.org/business. Before we meet our business panel, I'm delighted to introduce to you Ahmed Goga from OxLEP. Ahmed will shortly introduce Oxfordshire Plan 2050 to you, highlighting why it's so important and vital for our business community to engage with the upcoming consultation. Ahmed, over to you.
Rob, thank you very much and good morning to everyone. As I'm great to see so many of you joining this very important webinar as well. I'm not going to keep you very long. I just wanted to introduce you to the plan and the key issues that the consultation will be throwing up. But more importantly, it's to flag to everyone in the audience the importance of what is being discussed and why it's vital that business leaders are engaged from the outset. Now, the plan has been actually in development for a period of time. As Rob inferred, it's part of the housing and growth deal that was signed with government back in 2018, and there's been some preparatory work done in the last 12 months in getting the plan to the point of consultation. There was a discussion on some initial outline concepts around visioning as well. And the stage we're now at is the first stage of testing options and the consultation of proposals as well. The plan covers the whole of the county of Oxfordshire. It is being taken forward by the district councils together with the county council and, as Rob said, OxLEP as well. Now, the plan itself has a number of policies like any other plan, but it's a spatial plan. It will cover the whole of the county and over time will become the primary document that will guide development and wider growth ambitions as well for the whole of the county. There are 5 very important core themes that the plan is structured around. First of all, it's focusing around creating jobs and providing homes. There's also a very strong emphasis on climate change, and the policies are also focusing around how we address and tackle that. There's also an important theme around improving environmental quality and nurturing our wonderful natural capital and environmental assets that Oxfordshire thrives on. We also want to be planning for sustainable travel and for connectivity, and that's very important for businesses. That is repeatedly identified the need to improve on Oxfordshire's infrastructure. And then finally, what there is an ambition to make sure we have a strong and healthy community as well. Very important in the context of coming out of the pandemic and building resilient communities that are able to thrive and succeed as well. Now, the plan itself has a number of key elements which I think are important for today's conversation. I'm sure the panel will pick up. Amongst the things that it will be there to do will be to look over the next 30 years around how land use policies are aligned, particularly looking at how that is then linked up with infrastructure and the needs of our transport system, and also vitally building on the ambition set out in the Oxfordshire Local Industrial Strategy, which aims to develop Oxfordshire as a world-leading global innovation ecosystem to be among the top 3 in the world. The plan also is looking at how we build on the joint strategic vision that's been developed by the Oxfordshire Growth Board that meets the economic, social and environmental needs of the county. And it's also looking to identify how the economy grows and also succeeds and thrives, utilising the opportunities that have been created coming out of the lessons learned from the pandemic as well. And then finally, vitally as a golden thread all the way through this process is how do we make sure our economy is a green economy and harnesses the opportunities that are being created by our move towards a net zero Oxfordshire, but also making sure that we protect and nurture our wonderful environmental assets as well. Amongst the things that the plan is going to be looking at is asking questions around how we support the creation of jobs, how do we protect our economic assets, including our world-leading science, technology and innovation capability, but also critically, amongst other things, how do we support town centre renewal and revival? And also very important as well to Oxfordshire's economy, how do we support our thriving and vibrant visitor economy that straddles tourism, heritage, arts, culture, amongst other things as well, which accounts for over 10% of our economy as it currently stands as well, and provides very important jobs for all parts of Oxfordshire. And then finally also, it needs to be thinking about how it will meet the skills and education needs of our growing economy and also our fantastic business base as well. Now, the plan will be looking at spatial options as it says, and it will look at where that distribution of growth needs to be, where it needs to support existing assets, and most critically of all, it also needs to think about where we need to distribute those opportunities right across Oxfordshire as well. And there'll be a number of options that will be explored in the plan. It will also look at how that progress of growth will be managed and carefully, sustainably provide for the future as well. And there is economic data that's been produced that supports the various scenarios, and we'll explore that as well. And then finally, the plan will also need to reflect on how it works with the emerging Oxford to Cambridge arc and the planned spatial framework that the government is looking to bring forward for the OxCam arc as well. There's a timetable for that, of course, with a policy statement that was produced by the government in February of this year, and a consultation exercise will be launched later into September with wider options discussions in 2022, and in a final framework for the ARC being explored in autumn next year. So the whole range of things in the ARC that this plan will need to reflect on and be part of as well. Now, in terms of the timetable just for the Oxfordshire Plan 2050 consultation, the consultation formally kicks off on the 30th of July, and that will be for 10 weeks to the 8th of October. There'll be then a period of reflection while the team takes on board the suggestions and recommendations. And there'll be a second consultation, which is called Regulation 819. That's the draft plan itself, and that will be likely between May and June next year. And then it will be formally submitted to the inspector in September 2022. Now, many of those things seem so far away. The importance of this consultation is that this consultation will set the tone and the direction of travel as the plan is firmed up. So it's absolutely vital that the business voice is heard in this process, that informs and shapes the plan at its stages that it's at, so that the future subsequent stages are then building on these informed insights as well. Rob, I'll hand back to you, and hopefully that will stimulate the discussion with the panel.
Thank you, Ahmed. Now it is time to introduce our panel of leading Oxfordshire business figures. Firstly, we are delighted to welcome Scott Roberts, chairman of the Ensham-based advanced engineering business Polar Technology. Polar Technology is the holding company of Horizon Property, Lentus Composites and SST Technology, who specialise in the design and manufacturing of bespoke advanced precision fabrications for high-tech industries. We're also pleased to welcome to the panel Jim Wilkinson. Jim is the Chief Financial Officer for Oxford Sciences Innovation, an organisation that has helped to build a portfolio of more than 100 businesses worth over $2 billion, each backed by Oxford-driven science. And finally, it's a warm welcome to David Williams, who has recently been appointed as Commercial Director at Harwell Campus. Harwell Campus is, of course, home to the largest cluster of space-related companies anywhere in Western Europe, but is also the base for over 6,000 workers who, between them, represent a total of 60 nationalities. Thank you, David, Jim, and Scott, for giving up your time this morning. I must just point out as well, through no fault of his own, Jim has experienced a couple of technical difficulties, so we'll just be getting the sound through from Jim this morning, but thank you for your patience, Jim. Before we start with our panel, we want to encourage you to engage with the discussion too, our audience. You should see on your event dashboard a questions tab. If you have any questions or comments for our panel, please put them there. We have allocated some time at the end of the session to reflect on these, and we'll certainly endeavour to get through as many of those as possible. So we move across to our business panel. Thank you again for joining us this morning. We'll start immediately with the need for businesses to engage with the upcoming Plan 2050 consultation process, as just described by Ahmed. Firstly, to you, Scott. In light of the many impacts our economy has faced in recent times, particularly off the back of Brexit and COVID-19, how important is it for Plan 2050 to embrace our changing ways of working that have perhaps been accelerated over the past couple of years?
Well, good morning, everybody, and Rob, Ahmed, thanks for having me on. Look, I think it's clearly extremely important that business has a voice and an input into this plan. The first thing I thought of is, well, 2050 is a long way away. You know, I'm 55 now, and when I'm 85, I probably won't be doing this job. But actually what this does, I think, is it gives the business voice an opportunity to kind of get some of the basics right now. You know, I'm sure the world will be a very, very different place in 2050. But if we don't speak up now and get some of the things that we need as businesses right in the next 5 years, then, you know, the plan for 2050 isn't going to happen. So my approach to thinking about this, when you asked me the other day to make some comments, is I thought, well, look, why don't we as a business community think about what our own growth plans are? So, you know, I'll broadly share ours, and I think that might then hopefully stimulate some debate, such that businesses can then come back into this process through yourself and Ahmed and actually have their say. So at the moment, as you said, we're a medium-sized SME, 20 million turnover, employing about 200 people on our Horizon Technical Park at Ensham. And it would be reasonable to say that our long-term plan, say up to 2040, is to grow from our 20 million turnover base now to say 100 million. And that's probably going to be employing about 1,000 people. So, you know, we've got ambitions to try to get up the same size as Siemens are, for example. Well, that means I'm going to need 800 people. And therein lies some of the challenges. In addition to that, and something that I've not seen and heard about in the plan that I'd like to input into, is access to patient capital for the development of businesses in Oxfordshire. So if we go back to the people thing, because I think it all pretty much reverts back to that, you know, we need to attract young people, yes, with the right skills, but I think that skills is a word that's banded around too loosely. I can train the people. My guys will train the people coming into our business with the right specific skills. But we need people with the right attitude and capabilities. And I think that that's got to start with primary schools. And I think that then that leads you down to thinking, well, hang on, we've got great education, which is working completely independently from our great businesses, which is working completely independently from where people live and how they interact and the whole mobility piece. So I think it's really important that businesses take the lead, whether they are large enough, perhaps like ourselves, to have an individual input, or whether smaller businesses cluster together and have a joint input to say, how do we link what we do as a business with how we want our younger people to be educated and prepared to accept the skills as they move into those businesses? And where are these people going to live? Because I've got probably half my workforce driving from other counties because they can't afford to live here, and places that they could afford to live, they don't want to live, so they'll go and live in Gloucestershire. So there's some fundamental basics here that I think that we need to come together as a business community and have an input. And of course, you know, the old chestnuts of no mobile phone signals. Rob, we were trying to speak yesterday, no signal. I tried to speak to my lawyer, no signal. He's standing in his porch. How professional is that? Now, the plan for 2050 is fantastic, absolutely 100% behind it. But I would call on the business community to engage now to get the basics right so that 2050 can happen.
That's great. Thank you, Scott. Jim, bringing you into the discussion, what's your take on this and Plan 2050 being a real opportunity for the county's businesses to set our future ambitions?
Thanks very much, Rob. I think we're in a very uncertain time at the moment. It's not clear to me exactly how working practices will change going forward. We've certainly seen over the last 15 months our efficiency has improved dramatically. The number of transactions we've had has gone up. The number of new people and new investors coming into Oxfordshire has gone up significantly. So it's difficult to see that the old ways of working will return exactly as they did have. But we still have quite a few of the old issues. So we still have transport around Oxfordshire. We've still got a lack of infrastructure in terms of wet labs, for example. So somehow or other, we've got to try and marry those two together. And I kind of think that it's going to be, that there isn't anyone with the answer. I think it's going to be a shared experience over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, maybe longer, trying to work out what the most efficient method of working is and achieving the work-life balance, which I think everyone's come to the conclusion is really important at the moment. It's a fantastic opportunity to try to get that back into some sort of balance. So I do think that the communication and sharing experiences is going to be really important. From an OSI viewpoint, we have over 100 businesses we've created in the last 6 years. We're adding about 10 to 20 a year. Those businesses employ about 1,500 employees directly, so there's an indirect addition as well. And we've invested over £1 billion over that 6-year period. Looking forward, as those companies get bigger, we actually think that there's about £5 billion likely to be invested in Oxfordshire companies over the next 5 years. So this is really scaling up now with all the problems that brings. And I think we've got some direct issues, so the infrastructure around wet labs, offices, light industrial, but then how on earth we actually make sure that Oxfordshire can cope with this in terms of housing, education, medical and transport, just to name just a few. I think we have to be part of that discussion to highlight what we think is coming down the road and then to try to make sure we've got an environment that suits everybody with an appropriate work-life balance.
That's great. Thank you, Jim. David, over to you now. As a representative of one of the world's leading science park, what's your take on this and the need for businesses to engage in the process?
Hi, Rob. Morning, everybody. Thanks very much for inviting me to take part. It's great to be here and part of this discussion. I think first of all, just considering what we've all been through and are still going through, linked to the pandemic, there's a real sense of immediacy at the moment and a focus on the here and now. That's quite natural and understandable. You know, there are challenges, there are opportunities facing every single company, whether in hospitality all the way through to life sciences, and those obviously vary. So I think that, you know, it's hard to look 5 years, 10 years ahead, let alone 30 years ahead. And I started working in Oxfordshire in real estate and commercial development, etc. in 1988, and you know, I've clearly seen a huge journey. I think the university was at spin out number 5 then, or 6, or thereabouts. But now, obviously, you know, the dial's moved forward tremendously, and particularly over the last 5 or 6 years with the great work that OSI and the university have done in particular. But I think you know, I would echo what Jim says. From my perspective, things have moved dramatically forward in the focusing particularly on commercial real estate. I think it's about ambition and need, and you know, Oxfordshire is particularly strong in certain areas. Clearly, life sciences has been in the global spotlight quite rightly with the work over the last few months. Engineering, obviously, and we've got Scott on the panel, which is fantastic, and the fantastic capabilities in the county on engineering, energy and environment, and many other sectors too. So I think, yeah, we've got the greatest concentration of research facilities in Western Europe in Oxfordshire. We lead the way particularly. Picking up on Jim's point, I think that we do have a shortage of. We're great at incubation. We're fantastic at incubation. We're fantastic at innovation. Clearly, what our economy needs to do is to see the economic benefit of those as those companies mature, and there are great pressures for businesses, picking up on some of the points Scott's made, that to pick up and move elsewhere in the UK or overseas, and clearly we've got to resist that as much as we possibly can. The good news on the commercial real estate side is that although at the moment, if you take the lab sector particularly, which has been in the press quite a lot, we in Oxford and Cambridge is no different, London's no particular different. There is a real shortage of purpose-built labs, and you're in the tens of thousands of square feet compared to locations like Boston or New York or San Francisco, in picking America as examples, where you're in the millions of square feet. So clearly there's a scale thing, and I think that is being redressed. So at the moment, there is no shortage of money coming into Oxfordshire. There's no shortage of money wanting, this is real estate, wanting to find homes in Oxford. Bidwell's reported in March, over the last 12 months, I think it was £280 million of investment into office and lab real estate. In Harwell particularly, where we are, our plan is to build 1.6 million square feet over the next 7 years. We're on development at the moment, and that is happening. That is being delivered. Brookfield, who took the private sector joint venture, are working on that with the public sector joint venture partners. And again, a couple of months ago, Brookfield now own the Oxford Business Park as well. So they have a huge footprint in Oxford, and that's really exciting going forward. So it's absolutely about infrastructure. I think that's the focus of this. And if you're doing a plan over that period, then we have to plan for infrastructure.
Great, thanks David. Moving on to talent now. The past 12 months has elevated Oxfordshire's global standing across many sectors, which will ultimately lead to the world's best talent wanting to come here, or for many born and bred in the county to stay here and seek world-leading career opportunities, which each of you have alluded to. With this in mind, how vital is it for Plan 2050 to reflect this? And why is it important for Oxfordshire businesses to emphasise the need for affordable, more sustainable living options if we are to retain the world's best talent? Scott, let's kick off with your views on that.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to say anything particularly revolutionary here, but lots of young people born in Oxfordshire, and I've got two sons who are born in Oxfordshire. They can't wait to go somewhere else. I mean, it's great, but look, it can be seen, especially where I am in West Oxfordshire, pretty sleepy old place, and doesn't really have the nightlife attractions of London. Now, if you want to get young people to stay, make sure the internet works and 4G works and they can talk to each other and Instagram works and all the rest of it. That'll keep them inspired to stay in the county. I go back to my piece about businesses engaging really, really early on. I mean, just our local primary school here, we had some racing cars that we were doing some work on, and we stuck them on the lawn, and the kids were really inspired by it. Wow, look at this, and how do I get involved in that? And then So mums and dads were coming and picking them up at the end of the day, and they were engaged, and there was a real buzz about the place. So again, get hold of people early and convince them that actually it's a good place to stay. But you've got to hold on, and I think we can do that. But you've got to hold on to younger people. So where's the big centre of fun? I mean, okay, Oxford's all right for a night out, but you talk to 18, 19-year-olds, where are they going to go? I mean, you know, I live in Denchworth. There's not a lot going on there, but I love it, and that's the challenge with Oxfordshire. It's on one hand, it's where old people like me want to be quiet and retire, and yet in the very breath, I'm saying, oh yeah, but where's all the exciting places for young people to be? So I think the plan's got to address that, and I think we need, you know, Oxfordshire is such a polarized county, in my opinion. You know, when you've got, and it's polarized into, you know, some of the richest people in the world, and actually some of the poorest people, certainly in the UK, and that's reflected in the schools, and we've touched on that before. Maybe we should try to shift that into places where this might be a bit off the wall, but where people like I want to live, which is nice and quiet. I don't really need super fast broadband, and create hubs where younger people can live dispersed throughout the county without the need to feel that they have to go to London. So I think that's important. So again, some of the basics, but and finally, I would just say, how many people inputting into this plan are 18 years old? I mean, I can say what I think, but I'm 55 and I want something very different. So I would ask you guys, OxLEP, putting this together, where's the panel of 20-year-olds saying this is what we want? Where's the input from the Gen Z guys? You know, because they're the people that are going to be working in the plan that we're talking about delivering. So get them involved too.
A nice challenge back to us, Scott, and I'm sure no one would describe you as old as you've just described yourself.
I feel like it sometimes.
Jim, bringing you back into the discussion, how vital is this for OSI's portfolio of companies and those that you work with potentially in the future?
I think it's absolutely crucial. I mean, I'll start off with the university. The university is the #1 research university in the world, so it attracts talent from all over the world, the best talent from all over the world. Quite frequently, these are young people doing PhDs or masters. There is a lack of space for those in Oxford at the moment, and I know the university is working quite hard to try and find accommodation, create accommodation, and build out places so they can carry on attracting more young PhDs. And the university needs that, otherwise it's going to lose its preeminent position. We also attract a lot of talent from overseas into the companies, because again, they're world-leading businesses, usually at the very sharp point of science. So it's important that the accommodation is there for those people. I think as well, there's also you know, a viewpoint we have that these companies that expand have got to help the people who are already in Oxford and Oxfordshire. So we've got to be able to give more opportunity to all the youngsters who are here, enable them to stay, and actually share the economic benefits that are coming out of the companies. So accommodation does become absolutely key. And I'd also just say it's not just obviously houses and flats and apartments. It's all the associated services that you need. You still need to be able to get around. You still need to be able to access a doctor or hospital and education facilities. I also, though, I'm not a mad megalomaniac that's going to sort of concrete over all of Oxfordshire. We've got to look at how we can repurpose the areas we've already got. It's not just a question about expanding footprint, because that's not sustainable in the medium or long term. And you know, one of the things I found, not having come from Oxford, but when I sort of arrived in the centre of Oxford 6 years ago, is the amount of space that's dead, that's wasted, and that's actually going to be exacerbated. You can see it at the moment from the retail sector, which doesn't need as much space. So there needs to be a really active discussion about what are some of these buildings for and areas for, and what can we actually do to not build over greenfield sites, but repurpose some of the existing property. And of course, in Oxfordshire, that's pretty difficult, given all the different interests and different objectives that people have got. So again, that just reconfirms our idea that we need to have communication going on all the time. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Jim. David, bringing you back into the discussion. Presumably, this is also a huge issue for Harwell in the coming years too.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I'm not going to go over the points that Scott and Jim have made, which I echo those. And from the campus's perspective, I also have two boys, and I remember over many years taking them to lectures that STFC and RAL have run in the Pickabants Theatre, and sitting in there listening to lectures about a whole variety of things, you know, dark matter in space, you know, in all sorts of stuff, all down to you know, the atomic level as well. And looking around the room, you had age range from 7 to 70. You know, there is this enormous engagement, and I know that the STFC and the organisations on campus, you know, there is a big outreach exercise to schools, visiting schools visiting campus, work experience, all of those things. And you know, that engagement from school level, I'm personally passionate about. You know, getting people at that age involved and interested in STEM subjects, and then moving forward through the education process and to postgrads and obviously commercialization, as Jim has said. It's hugely important to you know, we've got to remember Oxford and the location is you know, works on a global stage, and we have an international audience. We have to offer the range and quality of amenities, housing, and everything else that stands shoulder and shoulder with those other locations. So, you know, come here as opposed to Lisbon or Madrid or Paris or Boston or wherever it might well be. And housing is important, and I again echo the comment that we have to have that range of amenities. So, you know, it has to be affordable. You have to have all of the range, and it's a huge challenge. There's a lot of research that's ongoing about creating these places, and it is about places for the generations and the way that they live and their career ambitions and aspirations and etc. And connections and communications. It's you know, I'm also in my 50s, and the way that I think is very different to the way that, you know, teenagers think. So we have to be cognizant of that.
Thanks, David, and thanks everyone for your individual input there. When it comes to spatial planning, often there's a perception that we perhaps have a binary decision to make. It's either about development or it's about protecting the environment. Therefore, how do we as Oxfordshire's business community support avoiding this approach, ensuring that we can play a key role in tackling climate change? And are there indeed commercial opportunities for our business community to embrace in supporting this drive as well? Scott, we'll come back to you again.
Yeah. Look, I'm no expert on climate change, and I'm sure that we can all, as individuals and businesses and as a county, do our bit, which is important. Whether it's going to shift the needle on a global scale, I don't know. But I'd add two responses to this. From a housing point of view, I'm talking to you from a mid-1980s built old brick building, which is the office block tacked onto one of our factories. And its sort of EPC certificate's pretty lousy, and it's probably not very environmentally friendly. What would be really useful is if I could, given the fact we've got a £10 million new facility that we're all sort of moving into at the moment, just on the other end of our site. What would be really useful is if I could knock these down, build some sensible, affordable housing, some flats and whatever. It feeds into everything else we've talked about. So you're repurposing existing land, which otherwise, you know, I can't rent it out. No one wants to rent it. So I think businesses, and to Jim's earlier point, you know, let's stop wasting the land we've got. I know there's a massive, understandably keen requirement to protect Oxfordshire's green belt. But when you look around, there's an awful lot of wasted space. So I think that if policymakers can make it cost effective and easy and not stressful for me to knock down some old brick office buildings that were built 30 years ago, convert them into 30 odd sort of affordable flats, so that the young people and apprentices and whatever can come and live here, walk to work, etc., etc. Then people aren't going to be driving an hour to work and back every day. So that's one kind of piece, which I think is kind of fairly logical. The other bit is about what we can do as a business community, and I can only say what we're doing for climate change. You know, our customers are big global brands, Siemens, GE, Boeing, Airbus, Rolls-Royce, those kind of people, and they all have, you know, their shareholder values, if you like, are staked upon their ability to genuinely demonstrate that they are going to deliver their business activities in net carbon zero by whatever their stated objective is, 2040. So we're developing a whole range of technologies that are going to go into those next generation of aircraft engines, electrical aircraft, huge amount we're doing electrification for vehicles, etc., and supporting other businesses in and around Oxfordshire and the UK, which are going to make a big difference, because we can take the technologies and the innovations that are coming out of the university, we can engineer those into products, and that's what we do with and for our customers, who then have a global reach. But you know, I'm going to state it at the end when you'll probably say what's the key thing you want to happen. Nowhere have I heard so far in all the documents I've read the word manufacturing. What's wrong with manufacturing? Yeah, you know, we talk about technology and innovation, and yeah, great. Well, fine, but stable economies, whether they're national or local, are often centered around a strong manufacturing base, and this can be high-tech manufacturing, and that's what we do. And if there are any other businesses out there like mine, I would strongly advise you to get in touch with OxLEP, pull ourselves together, and get manufacturing. We should be proud of what we do in manufacturing, because that's where a lot of the money is made, and it creates that sustainable local economy where you've got jobs for everyone, not just people with PhDs that can go to university or run businesses, but the guys that want you know, a fairly guaranteed employment locally. And I think, you know, if you can create that environment in the business hub, then you're also going to impact beneficially on climate change.
Thanks, Scott. Jim, bringing you back into the discussion, and also picking up on one of Scott's earlier points as well. Much of your portfolio at OSI will very much be at the cutting edge of clean tech and more sustainable ways of operating and indeed living. What's your sort of collective view?
First of all, I'm very optimistic that we've got so much technological change coming that quite a few of the issues that people are worrying about will get resolved one way or another. I sort of go back to a couple of points made before. I think we've got a new method of working that's coming around, where we've got to marry up what we've done over the last 16 months with what we did over the previous sort of 30 years. And I think, you know, there'll be less travel and less physical meetings. There's less retail. So I sort of go back to the repurposing of the areas and trying to get the work-life balance sorted out. Quite concerned about Scott's children not having anywhere to go partying, so we obviously need some entertainment areas of some sort. So I think we've got to resolve that. You know, we ran a clean tech event for some of our companies probably only about 2 months ago, which brought in investors from all over the world. I think they had more than $1 trillion under investment, which if we'd have done that pre-COVID, we'd have probably had about half those people. So it actually has enabled us to reach out a lot further without people having to travel and cause damage. I think, you know, looking for the companies we've got YASA, which is electric motors, which I'm sure Scott knows, we've just been sold to, or part of it's been sold to Mercedes. You know, they're the most efficient electric motors in the world. We've got Animal Dynamics, which is drones, Alloyd, which is better metals, with less environmental damage and more utility. Mixergy, which is home boilers, AI on home boilers, which was picked up by Centrica, being rolled out by Centrica. We've got Oxford Flow that prevents water waste on using different pressure valves. we've got a whole centre of fusion power here. We've got First Light Fusion, but there's Tokamak, there's Cullen. There's a big agri-tech sort of movement just starting. The university is very hot in that, and we certainly know that some of the things we're looking at increase carbon capture significantly from plant growth at the same time as increasing food production. We've got meat alternatives. So I think there's a whole lot there that's still relatively small companies that are growing, that are attracting an awful lot of interest and beginning to attract a lot of investment that will sort of help us out. And I think it is up to us to support those companies as much as we can, because they can actually change the world if we can get some of their products out there. That's it, Rob.
Great, thanks, Jim. And finally to David, presumably sustainability has to form a large part of any economic discussion, including Plan 2050. What's your take on the previous points made?
Yeah, look, it's fundamental, and it runs as this golden thread through absolutely everything. And certainly on campus, we've got three, shortly to be four clusters: health, space, energy, and quantum is the new cluster that's emerging at the moment. And energy, all of them touch, obviously, the climate change. As I said, it runs through absolutely everything, and it's one of the grand challenges that the campus is focusing its research capabilities on. On energy particularly, so we have the Faraday Institute on campus, so that is looking particularly at energy storage and battery solutions in particular. But there's a whole load of work over looking at alternative energy sources as well. So Oxfordshire and the work, and Jim's highlighted fusion as well. We are again leading the world in research into energy, and it's fantastic. It's a national asset, the work and the innovation that we have here. So wouldn't it be great if so we've got the Net Zero Living Lab at Harwell, and wouldn't it be great if some of those innovations are implemented and acted on in the county? And economically, look, there's a long list of businesses that are basing their work on climate change and on addressing and moving that issue forward. It's absolutely fundamental. So far as development is concerned, sustainability, not surprisingly, underpins what we're doing on campus. There's a carrot and a stick here. The carrot is that the sorts of organisations that we obviously have organisations from 1, 2, 3 people all the way through to international organisations, and increasingly CSR requires that sustainability agenda and statement being made. So that's the carrot that and that applies everywhere. That you've got development has to be, certainly in commercial, has to be sustainable. The stick is that the MEES regulations, so this is EPC and energy usage in buildings, is tightening all the time, and it is expected to continue to tighten. But I think there is a golden opportunity there, and we have to embrace it, and Oxfordshire is in a fantastic place to do so.
Thanks, David. Before we move on to our delegate questions, and thank you to my colleague Jordan, who's behind the scenes collating those, much appreciated. Just one final question that we'll work through. Reflecting on, I think, Scott's earlier point, we're all very hopeful that we'll live to see what a 2050 in Oxfordshire actually looks like. But in all seriousness, how critical is it for young people in particular, I guess those with the most entrepreneurial minds, to be inspired by what a future Oxfordshire actually will look like? Scott, bringing you back into the discussion, what do we need to communicate to young people through this process so that they come away with the message that I need to be in Oxfordshire? I know you've touched on this earlier, but I guess just to reaffirm some of those points.
Yeah, I think at a really, really young age, they need to believe that this is a county that they can engage with in a career path which is going to excite them. And I have to say, having lived in Oxfordshire for most of my life now, and again to some of Jim and Dave's points, I mean, it is, I am biased, but I mean, let's face it, when you know what's going on, the career opportunities and life choice opportunities in this county are phenomenal for young people. One thing that we come across is that, when people come around and have a look at what we do, which is I'm sure there's hundreds of businesses logged onto this call, and it's exactly the same for them. But for example, nobody realised that we built all the 160 bikes that won all the gold medals for the Rio Olympics, and we just kind of took it for granted because we got the contract with Saballo and British Cycling, and that was it, and we did it. But when people know that, they say, "Wow, did you do that?" And you take one of those bikes down to the local schools, and they all sit on it and have a go. It's like, oh wow, and it's inspiring. It's what the plan must do is encourage and facilitate businesses who want to engage with young people in the community, such that we can inspire them. Look, throughout Oxfordshire, the excellent educators that we have will do a great job. I think business should reach down below, to the young primary school children and instill in them those entrepreneurial traits, problem solving, risk taking, determination, and belief and confidence. And if we create young people who genuinely believe that they're as good as anyone else in the world, and Oxfordshire is the place where they can demonstrate that, then we'll hold on to them. All the other hygiene factors we've discussed accommodated. So, businesses, get involved with kids in primary schools at young ages and get them inspired so they know what the opportunities are. The educators will do the rest, and businesses take them back at the end, wherever they get off, whether it's 16 or whether it's 21 or 24 with a PhD. It doesn't matter. There's a place for everyone, but business has a responsibility to do that, to foster that inspiration in communities. That's what I think we should do.
Thanks, Scott, and a really timely example with regards to previous Olympics, given that we have the current Summer Olympics happening at the moment. So thanks for bringing that up. Jim, once again, bringing you back in. Oxford has a track record of attracting the world's most talented young people. You've mentioned that earlier today. How can we continue to attract that talent over the next 3 decades?
Well, I think the first thing is, I think Oxfordshire is changing. This pandemic has just re-emphasised to the rest of the world just how important the research that's going on in Oxfordshire is, and it's attracting a huge amount of interest. Brand Oxford is huge around the rest of the world at the moment, and I think that's given us a huge opportunity for young people. We some talked about the amount of investment that's coming in. The number of startups in Oxfordshire is right up there at the top in the UK. And they're varied industries. It's not just all in one area. It's across a whole broad range. So I think it's a huge opportunity for young people to get involved. And although we sort of start off on the science side and the deep science, actually we're going to need, all these companies need all the talents and all the skills at all levels that you'd expect in a company. So that does make the opportunity big. I also think there's a huge opportunity to make sure we're inclusive across the whole of Oxfordshire, and to make sure that we are addressing inclusivity and diversity, because I think the pace of change is big and is going to get faster, and it would be a massive error if we didn't actually make sure that we looked after everybody as far as we possibly could. So I'm actually very positive about the future for the young people. I do think we have got to think about it and do it properly. It's a huge opportunity.
Thanks, Jim. And finally, David, how important is it for young people to understand the future opportunities at world-leading science parks like Harwell campus that you represent? And I guess from a commercial property perspective, also young people understanding the types of world-class facilities that actually exist in the county?
Well, yeah, as I said before, Harwell does a lot here, and I think I remember a few years ago. And it's quite a big task, but the campus opened its doors over a few days, and I can't remember how many people attended, but it was 10,000 plus people came over the days. It was absolutely heaving on the day that I went, and they opened the doors to the facilities, and science is cool. It's there in front of you is a piece of moon rock, or here's the most powerful laser in the world, and all this kind of thing, and that's what really gets people. I remember going to the cryogenics labs. I mean, freezing. I think it was freezing blue tack or something. I mean, it was just cool stuff, and I think that's absolutely important to do that. But I think making it visible, making it something that, and we haven't really talked about creative or digital clusters as well, and sectors. I mean, that's really exciting, the things that are happening there, and I'm very conscious that some of these things aren't particularly visible, and I guess that's something that just making it more accessible to younger people, I think has got to be the key.
That's excellent. Thanks, David. As promised, we'll now move back across to your questions and comments. There's been many comments coming through over the last half an hour or so, so thank you to everyone for your engagement. I think Ahmed is still on the line too, so I might just also ask Ahmed to pop back up on the screen as well. Hi, Ahmed. We'll just go through a few of the questions that have been sent across, and as I say, thank you to everyone for your input this morning. It's hugely appreciated. I think there's a general theme around the phrase levelling up, and one of the delegates has said, when you hear the phrase levelling up being used nationally, how important is it for levelling up to occur locally too? I think Scott touched on this earlier on, and presumably this should be incorporated into the Plan 2050 thinking too. Maybe Ahmed, if I throw that to you initially, and perhaps if others would like to comment afterwards.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. The terms get bandied around all the time. It's not for me to comment on how the Prime Minister wants to apply it, but I mean, it's really important to understand the point about Oxfordshire as a place. You have amongst the poorest parts of the country, cheek by jowl with the richest, and issues around housing affordability are also very prevalent here. In some cases, the ratio of affordability is 17:1 in terms of income, household income as well. And there's also challenges around health and life expectancy, which is substantially lower in some parts of Oxford compared to the other parts of the counties. In many cases, somewhere between 5 and 10 years difference, which is absolutely crazy for a place that's meant to be as wealthy as Oxfordshire is. So there are some real issues that we should be very cognizant of, which are within our own communities. And it's absolutely vital, I would say, that the plan needs to look at these things. It talks about healthy communities as one of the areas it needs to address. But I think Scott's point is really key here. The best way to bring people out of those sorts of areas of deprivation is very good education opportunities and the ability to access employment, which are paying good wages. And that comes with a vibrant economy that's creating pathways for people into the opportunities that have been created by colleagues on this panel and many others as well. And it's right across our economy. So I think it's really important that in that context, business has a huge role to play. They can provide the leadership on so many fronts in terms of how workforce practices are, how education investment is taken forward by businesses alongside the colleges and schools, and also about how you nurture and support and develop talent as well. These are fundamental things that businesses can provide that leadership to, and I think engagement in the plan will be a vital part of that process.
Scott, you're nodding away. Is there anything further that you'd like to add? It was a point that you raised earlier on.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, look, we you know, bad things happen, and you know, let's just take two events that have happened, okay, recently, and let's try to pull some good stuff out of it. You know, love it or hate it, Brexit's happened. Fine. COVID, that's happened, and we're going to have to live with it. It's not going to go away, right? So how do these two things change things? Well, what I'm seeing is that not only our business, but perhaps more importantly, my customers' businesses, there's a massive reshoring exercise going on. You can't get anything out of China, and if you do, it's sort of like, you know, 16 weeks and then it arrives and it's wrong. Prices are going up around the world. You can see what's happened to global commodity prices. So I think there's going to be a massive shift now into kind of grow your own and a kind of a, you know, a seasonal thing. But you know, in manufacturing and engineering that we're involved with, I can see that we're going to be really stimulated now to build up our own local supply chains. Now, whether that's Oxfordshire or UK centric, fine, I'm not going to argue about that. So that then creates a massive opportunity for companies, you know, all these startups, they're going to want to grow. Because if we're not careful, you get a startup, you raise shareholder value, you flog it to an American or Chinese company. We've got to stop that. There's got to be in this plan some joined up thinking which says, actually, we want these entrepreneurs to grow their businesses into massive companies and stay in Oxfordshire, because everything that will then come down from that triangle will feed in and deliver all the lovely things that we've been talking about in the sustainable plan. And I think reshoring is going to provide an opportunity now. So let's get the basics right now so we can build up those supply chains and offer jobs right across the spectrum, from people with PhDs in universities down to people that are supporting manufacturing operations, emptying bins, cleaning, keeping the site clean, healthy, safety, all that kind of stuff.
David, I'm keen to get your views on this, because I know Harwell are very much engaged with the wider communities, particularly in the south of the county. But there's also another comment that's come through which I think ties into this point in terms of the so what factor. So, you know, we've got several dozen businesses joining us today to discuss Plan 2050, but I guess it's a much broader point around our communities and our businesses saying, well, so what? Why should I be engaged? So I'll be interested to get sort of your views on those 2 points as well, and then we'll ask the same question of Jim.
Okay, well, I'm not going to go over the ground that Scott's just made. I think it's really important about, you know, the social spectrum. But yeah, on that particular subject, I mean, Harwell is a national asset. It's global facing. It is one of the few places in the world where you have the concentration of research infrastructure at scale. So you've got life sciences sitting alongside the physical sciences and material sciences. It's a rare commodity. And the campus is part of a national network of research infrastructure. So the organisations, if you take space, for example, we've got the UK's largest space cluster at Harwell. The organisations that we work with, so I mean private sector, so business organisations, also have representation and presence elsewhere in the UK, in centres of excellence doing particular things in those areas. So I think that, you know, we're talking about the county, we're talking about that boundary. Now, of course, you know, from a business perspective, that boundary evaporates. It's you know, so I think we have to be cognizant again of that fact that we are part of this wider region, you know. And I think it does come back to that point which I've talked about many times and still grapple with. I think we all grapple with is, you know, where does Oxford sit? You've got the Arc, you've got the Golden Triangle, you've got you know, you've got all these names banded across, but that global Oxford as a brand is extremely strong, as Jim said. But I think our context of that in the levelling up is really important. And I mean, you know, let's be clear, the public sector, so our taxpayers' money, it's something akin to £700 million has been invested in the campus in recent years in research infrastructure, and you know, and more is coming. So we've got the Natural History Museum coming, we've got quantum computing centre coming in the near future. You know, Rosalind Franklin Institute's just been built, VIMIC's just been built. We've got the National Satellite Test Facility being built at the moment. It is considerable, and so I think the part that Harwell plays into Oxfordshire, but also the wider UK, we need to look at it in that context, I believe.
Thanks, David. Jim, interested to get your views on that, and also another question that's come in around why do we feel that businesses need to resist the pressure to move elsewhere in the UK and overseas? I guess you know, in terms of the expertise that exists here in Oxfordshire. Maybe a couple of thoughts on those collective questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I agree with Scott. We don't want to be selling companies when they get to 100 million. We want to build them up and get them into the billions, because that's what's really going to drive the employment and spread the wealth around across the county. I think as well, we've got a real fresh opportunity here that as these companies are growing. I know that we've implemented a diversity inclusion a sort of program across the 100 companies. So we're very keen to make sure that we're not just going to the same old areas and picking up the same types of people. We want to make sure that this is really does benefit everybody. And then resisting pressure to move across the rest of the UK, absolutely not. I think one of the issues here is if you've got companies that have got fantastic research that needs to be close to university, we want that bit close to university. But if these are global opportunities, potentially global companies, so they are going to end up with operations in other countries, obviously, but also around the UK. If there's go slightly against Scott on this one. If there's a car manufacturing load of expertise in the Midlands, let's not build a car here and do it. And that's part of the programme as well. That the opportunity that Oxford has got is the research is so good that it's viewed nationally and internationally as a massive opportunity here to get the IP, to get it into companies and benefit the whole world. And that's part of the path that we try to build.
That's great. Thank you, Jim. I'm very conscious of time. There's been lots of comments and questions that have come in. Thank you, everyone, for engaging with the event this morning. We are very, very grateful. If we haven't answered your question, we'll do our best to follow up with you directly. But before we close this morning's event, if we go briefly back to our business representatives, I would just like to ask each of you from a business perspective, what would your one wish for Oxfordshire Plan 2050 be? Scott, you started us off on each occasion. Let's not change. We'll come to you first.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to cheat, and I've got 3. So please, will you promote, for those of us out here that make stuff, will you please put in the plan something that, high-tech manufacturing is actually sexy, and those of us in Oxfordshire that do it are quite good at it, and it's not all about the sort of the upfront, innovation and invention. We're excellent at that, but we also make stuff, and you can, make some good money and pay some good tax doing that. Please, can we have something in there which recognises that access to capital for startups is easy. There's billions of it about, but getting access to the right patient capital, to then grow from your 10, 15 million turnover to your 100 million plus, that's harder. And the banks in this county are pretty useless at it. And finally, can we get something that sort of joins up local business clusters with primary schools, so you can inspire those young kids, and then close that with some kind of campus-based housing, using the brownfield sites that we've got dotted around to get people much closer to work. That's it.
Thanks, Scott, and we don't mind you coming up with 3 ideas. That's absolutely fine. Jim, your view.
I've got 3 as well, actually. I did try to narrow them down to 1, but I think the centre of the plan has got to be to improve people's lives and make sure we've got a work-life balance. And I think what's happened over the last 15 months is just emphasised to everybody that things can be different, and we can actually have a different way of working. The second thing is just the repurposing the property. There's huge swathes of Oxfordshire where they've got the wrong things, taking up huge amounts of space that are just not needed. So I'd really like to try and get everyone aligned to make sure that we're looking at the places where we can actually repurpose property. And then the third one's very OSI focused, which is wet labs, which is something anybody who's talked to me the last 5 years knows knew I was going to say this, but I need wet labs everywhere. So that's the third thing I'd want.
Thank you. And David, I suspect you've probably got maybe 5, 6, 7 asks, but we'll go with it.
Well, probably we're working on the wet labs bit, Jim. I think the first thing is that I'm going back to my original point. 2050 is a long way away, and you know, we're in this period of this decade is going to see rapid change. We know that, and I think having a mechanism for keeping it current, keeping people engaged. You know, what we think and believe now will be very different in 5 years' time, I'm sure. So keeping that currency, I think, is critical, so that we keep the thing live and fresh and moving forward. I think pace is important, and you know, things take time, and there are certainly subjects, you know, getting the East Rail connection for passengers, for example, to connect around to the business and science parks. So, you know, I think I first heard that discussed, I don't know how many years ago, but many years ago. But you know, just how can we move some of these things forward a little bit quicker? I think that's critical. And I guess the final thing is Oxford does need a visible innovation quarter, and again, I know this is current, but you know, the sense of arrival into Oxford compared to other global innovation cities is underwhelming, shall we say, at the moment. And I think that, you know, there needs to be a visible thing, and clearly there are, you know, places like Harwell and others, but I think Oxford City, that would be a huge step forward. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. So that's it for this OxLEP digital event. Thank you to you, our audience, for joining us, and thanks once again to our panel, Jim Wilkinson, Scott Roberts, and David Williams. A big thanks also to my colleague Ahmed Goga from OxLEP too. As mentioned at the start of the event, the public consultation for Oxfordshire Plan 2050 begins tomorrow. That's the 30th of July, excuse me, if you aren't watching this event live. OxLEP encourages all businesses to take part in the consultation, and we believe it's a great opportunity for our business community, and indeed all communities in the county, to give their views as to the future direction of Oxfordshire, particularly following what's been the most testing of times for everyone over the past 18 months. Head to oxfordshirePlan.org/business for more details. We plan to hold a further business-focused Oxfordshire Plan 2050 event in the autumn, so please continue to visit the OxLEP website for more details. Once again, from everyone at OxLEP, thank you for joining us, and we wish you an enjoyable end to the summer. Thanks very much.